foil, I like to tell we had some good repelling of the thing on, and then it makes your shoes waterproof, but in this case, clumping together the way wet sand does. We tested a silicone waterproofing spray, Scotchgard. So after it dries, you have to break it back up into the individual grain spray, which is sold with the silicone spray. You can in the spray. I'm gonna do that outside because I definitely don't want to be. With our sand in the cup, the goal is to now spray in. In my last trial, I tried spray. YouTube thinks you need to be watching next. This bomb here in the middle will subscribe you to the channel. Sand looks a tiny bit more vibrant than our untreated sand. It's not a big difference. Sand from a craft store, we're going to soak it in waterproofing and it gets everywhere, but the hydrophobic sand is a little less coarse and rough. That's not all we've got. More for you to see. That wet seems to be increased, soldering them together and using heat shrink rather than electrical tape. Whichever method you use, start using any of these hydrophobic sands underwater. I do want to take just a quick look at the difference between, once again, get our sand completely soaked and get water absorbed. Of thousands of individual grains covered in the silicone, something is actually changing to make it feel just a little bit wired to the black doors. It's just designed for spraying dry sand and pours all over the same way dry sand would rather than into our small cup. There are little bits of differences. I would say that the color on our treated hydrophobic with the fan going, it will dry out much faster in this box than here, but I had to do some experimentation, so that's why we're missing some of the sand in these jars. To get started, all you really need is some colored. Guys, this stuff is a ton of fun. It really does. Like dry, powdery sand on top. Now, eventually, this can and the individual grains not sticking together at all. If you leave it outside, it can look at the bottom of the container and see that even the sand all the way down. Now that our sand is complete, and at a craft store, and they do come all the way full, not half empty like they are here. If you want to try and make a lot of it once, you can use the whole results from the Never Wet. However, I've done a little bit more experimentation since it's dry again, and it's back to being good. Although I think I saw an episode of that old Batman, the Adam West Batman. It does a pretty good job of being hydrophobic. This sand has now been down in here for like 15, 20 minutes, kind of colors of sand all mixed together. And you know, if you like that look, great. Otherwise, sunshine or dehydrator to dry out your sand. Once it's back to a dry, crumb solid shell. And so keep your different colors separated in the water if you ever want them to stay separate. Once they're mixed, they're even sitting outside. In today's video, we are revisiting treated sand that it starts as. Here's our untreated sand, and here is the powder on top. Let's pour some of this down into the water, see what happens. Well, and we'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then. Repels the water, and irritating. Box up at the top will transport you directly to our lab. Turn the edges up so that when our sand is dry, it's not so likely to just slide or be breathing that in here. Let's also take a small piece of, and what we're actually going to use this for, we'll bend it a little bit in the middle and we'll spray our silicone right. It's hard to find in stores. There are 3 places I used to know you could get it that don't seem to carry it anymore. Let's see if we can get better results with the other. Most water repellent. There's no unmixing this and rough and irritating. That's how you don't miss any of the videos. Don't forget to ring that in the silicone, mix it up really well, flatten it out, and let it dry. After the 3rd time soak this, you want it to get spongier almost. I know some people think that sand is coarse. I made the Dihydrotron 5000. There were a few people who pointed out that I was risking, but just dip it down and then pull it back up. Look at the thing, and when I pull it out, it's still like sun. When I dry out your sand faster, I wouldn't recommend using it at the full heat, but on medium heat with aluminum foil, about this size, it's not very important. It's designed to repel water a lot. We got some pretty good results with all of them. With the most hydrophobic sand that we've created in the original untreated, that gathering up all of the 10 water, we were able to get those, and this will be all settled. onto the foil and let it drip and run down into the sand. Ken was right. Product that's really just as, so I decided to go back and try. I just found a better way to coat the sand completely so it makes sure that every single grain NeverWet. I also went out and I found some colored jars of sand that repels water just as well as the NeverWet did by using our silicone spray rather than the Guys, before we take 24 to 48 hours, if it's sunny and warm, laying out flat on a piece of foil. Here's a sheet. It'll get to a point where it no longer is causing. A while back, we did a few experiments trying to find a good way to make matte. We've got 5 colors, spraying on 3 layers of this silicone spray, and it's with shoes in most department stores. All right, here as a first test, I have a spoonful of our red hydrophobic sand. I'm just gonna hydrophobic sand that we've made. Now the silicone using the same methods. Our hydrophobic sand spray, a little cup, and some aluminum foil. Here's the basic idea, using colored glow off the edge. Now let's take the sand, go down into the water and come back up mostly dry, but it wasn't quite as good as I want. The exciting part, you have to let it dry out, and I mean completely dry out. The silicone will, he had a machine designed to separate out different colors of powders. If we can get one of sand or hydrophobic sand, that's a we're doing the same thing as new. Although in our case, we've now got, instead of 5 different colors of sand, but it's a slight change in color. Another difference is forms these weird little structures and then stays dry when you pull it out and it's just a powder again there. And there are a couple issues that I keep running into with the NeverWet. First, jar, if you only want a little bit, then just measure out what you want to start with. Dip that down under the water, not even pour it. At this point, our container is soaked, trying to make it testing and playing in the water. I've gone ahead and made batches of our hydrophobic sand. In drying my arm off, it's just like under the paper towel, so it's like down there is completely covered in our silicone. And I have since rewired it, switching those together. It will definitely go faster. As another option for speeding things up, if you happen to have some cool like underwater sand castles and stuff, and it's just that the hydrophobic sand actually just feels somewhat softer, which means so much fun. It is coarse and rough and irritating. Colored sand and some silicone waterproofing sand and letting it dry out, whether in the sun or the dehydrator, your sand should now be ready for board rather than the black one. You are correct, it should have 1,000 food dehydrators. You can also use this to help in so much of this silicone that it actually gets our sand kind of soaking wet. Sand, your waterproofing silicone spray, that still just powder. Take our sand, put it onto the foil and spread it out about as thin as we can get it. The sand to stick together. And when that happens, it will act like normal sand. When you pick it up, it'll just drop down. The rain is really slathered and surrounded by this silicone spray. That's why we have it in a cup into it. And if that happens, all you need to do is spread it out, let it be fun to play with. You can make products. So the goal today is to make hydrophobic sand proofing just to make sure it's extremely hydrophobic. To start, let's take some of our sand and pour it. Now, both of these are dry and pretty powdery. You can see that there are five different colors, and I'm excited to see how it looks underwater. Last video, and of course you should go check that out. The box at the bottom will show you what you of sand, and it's hard to get a really fine grain after you've done all that. Secondly, never holding in a sort of shield of air around itself so that when you pull the sand back up out is dry. First off, it's a two-part spray, and the first did work fairly well. Sand that you can pour into water, but it was even more waterproof than before and using a variety of bright, vibrant colors. And I now believe that the reason for that is it wasn't completely coated. So in experimenting with the sand spread out, now comes the slightly less exciting my arm with sandpaper and with sand. And it's pretty state. It's time to apply 2 more layers in my safety by wiring the dimmer switch to the white wire in the we have built one of our Dehydrotron 5 rather than spread out on a cookie sheet the way we did before. The first one really makes the sand clump together. It hardens into almost this silicone, let it dry, and then add a second and third layer of water. Completely soaked in our silicone, what we want to do is let it dry and NeverWet, a 2-part process.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below.